and welcome to another special guest episode with Java and Jesus with Kathy. And I have really been looking forward to this episode with two very beautiful and special godly women. And I really appreciate that you agreed to do this with me. Our focus today is going to be faith and mentorship. And I've known these two girls for pretty much their whole life. And so we go back a long way, and they have a special place in my heart. So I want to start by thanking you both for joining me today on my little podcast adventure.
Thank you. We're happy to be here. That's exciting.
And I'm going to start with Heather just because her last name comes first in the alphabet. And so she came to the church in 1989, and that is when we met your family. You were about 2 years old, and your sister was even a bit younger. And I seen your mom for the first time in the nursery as I was bringing my children in there to be looked after. And she was talking about potty training. I'll never forget it.
Oh, that.
And I have to say, you and your sister were both the cutest. And some things don't change. You and your sister are grown women now, but you're still so adorable and beautiful on the inside and out, as they say. So why don't you start, Heather, just tell folks a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go to Charity.
Okay, well, thank you again for having us. I know I really look forward to listen every Monday on your episodes, just hearing how you talk about God's faithfulness and all your memories and all his answered prayers so far, and your faith for more of his answered prayers. So it's been really encouraging to listen every week. So thanks for having us.
Well, thank you for saying that. I'll pay you later.
Well, as you mentioned, I was basically born and raised in Calgary, grew up in the church. I am fifth out of 6 kids. And our family was very musical. My parents have a few loves of their life. One is their family, music is one, God is another, and those are basically where all my childhood memories revolved around. If we weren't practicing or performing music, we were at the church, summer day camps, playing hide and seek at prayer meetings, family potlucks at group events. I also remember there was like one bike parade where we paraded around the community on our bikes just to kind of get the word out there that our church was around. So that's another fun memory. But and as the years went on, the church started a school called Eastside Christian Academy, and I think I was in grade 7 at that time. And my parents looked around and, okay, all eligible children of age are going to be enrolled in this school. So I think that was 3 of us, the younger 3 at that time, went to that school. And that's where I got to know you a lot better. And interestingly enough, I met my husband through the school. And 22 years later, we have 2 children, a 13-year-old girl, Dahlia, and Jericho's 18, and we just absolutely adore them.
Aw, that's so good. Okay. Okay, so Charity, you came to Eastside in 1993 with your mom, and you were about 5, and now you're 36. The same age as my middle son. Hard to believe that it is 31 years of history that we share, right?
Yeah, it
And
is.
I remember you as a large-eyed, skinny little girl, and look at you now. You've gone from skinny to elegant and slender, even after giving birth to 4 children. And I just joke and I kind of say, well, maybe if I had one more, I would be slender. But, Anyway, I've literally been able to watch both of you grow up, and that's been kind of an exciting thing for me. Just tell people a little bit more about yourself and your family, Charity.
Yeah, like you said, thank you very much for having me on the show. I'm really excited to be here with both of you. I've known you both for so long. It's very special. So thank you for this. This is wonderful. But I've been going to Eastside City Church since 1993, like you said, and I came here with my mom. This was a foundational church for me in many, many ways. My family life wasn't, the norm in the 90s. It wasn't very often that you would have families separated or divorced. So I definitely had a different dynamic than many of the families in the church. So it was really interesting and wonderful to see so many families here and present and active and taking active roles in the church, because then I could see what a marriage looked like and what a family dynamic looked like. And so there was a lot of inspiring families. I actually love seeing your family always go on stage. I was like, oh my gosh, they know all these instruments. Like, it looks so amazing. Like, I was like, there was just really wonderful moments for that. And So I really appreciated those moments. And I met my husband here, actually, at the church when I started going to youth group. And we've been married over 17 years now. And we have 4 beautiful boys that we love and cherish. And we're homeschooling. So it's very crazy and chaotic in my home. Like, a few episodes back, you had mentioned how girls are more dramatic, but boys are harder to keep alive.
Oh, yeah.
And I can testify to that wholeheartedly, because there has been many near-death experiences with my children. And sometimes it's like, why again today? Why are you trying to kill your brother? Like, keep him alive, please. And so, that was my upbringing. And then now I have the opportunity to have a very good family dynamic that was very different from my childhood, and I know that was based very rooted because of the influences from that I could see all around me at Eastside, and I'm very grateful for that.
So I would say that all of us actually represent that classic example found in Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way that they should go, and when they're old, they will not depart far from it, right? Mm-hmm. So you see, I am old and I have not departed from the way I should go. But I would just like for both of you to maybe take a minute and share how being raised in a Christian home really impacted who you became as adults. And this time we'll reverse. We'll start with you, Charlie.
Okay. Well, like I had mentioned, it was me and my mom, and then eventually a sister would come and another sister. And, but like, it was like an awkward setting at home when it came to faith discussions and faith things. And although I knew wholeheartedly that my mom's faith was exceptionally genuine, she really does love Jesus, and she absolutely wholeheartedly would worship and pray and read her word. And she was a great example of what to do on that individual basis. And I really do value that. And, but it was just because of the dynamic that we had as mother and daughter, it was like kind of awkward to talk to her on a faith-based thing. So I really appreciated coming to church and learning those types of things here at church, and having those mentors that really pushed me into the direction of faith. And so it was, our children's ministry was very dynamic, and we had a great youth group that was huge. Yeah. And then, I also attended Eastside Christian Academy, and then those really cemented a lot of our faith moments. We'd have like conventions for Eastside Christian Academy, and every night the girls would always have heart-to-hearts. Like, I think we cried every single night. Yeah. And, who knows what all the guys were doing, but like the girls were having heart-to-hearts and braiding hair and just eating candy and chocolate and having a great time. But it was like those were so meaningful for me to teach me like what not to do and what to do and how to move along, and that's where that like Christian foundation started for me, for sure.
And it's a form of mentorship, right? Like, it seems like it's, mentorship should somehow be something very formal, and yet it was very organic, right? Yeah. Just at these camps, and now we're all in our bunk beds, and and I had to be there because I needed to be the chaperone, and but it was still really special moments, and like you said, lots of really good conversations. I know when we were preparing this, you mentioned specifically Lisa Honorat, and she's obviously a good friend of mine, and I've had her on the podcast, but why don't you share some of the things she did that were really impacting?
Yeah, Lisa Honorat was a huge mentor for me. She took me under her wing when I was grade 7, grade 8, and for probably a year to 3 years, like in that time frame, she'd have weekly devotions with me. We'd go through books together. We'd learn about prayer together, and we'd bake and we'd cook, and I'd go over to her house. And if it weren't for those like foundational moments where somebody spent that one-on-one time with me, like it really set me apart, especially in those like formidable like early puberty years, and she just encouraged me, and she encouraged me for what I wanted for a husband, and she, kind of set up different, not expectations, that's the wrong word, but hey, Charity, wait for this, or hope for this, or have faith for this, or just pray into this. And she wasn't whimsical in in her suggestions to me, but she didn't also like, thrash my dreams either. You know, she had like such a beautiful balance, and I really appreciated Lisa. Like she really set an amazing foundation for me in those years, and I really am so grateful for it. Mentorship is so important.
It is, and it's hard to sometimes understand the impact that you have on people, right? Mm-hmm. So what would your response be to that question about?
Well, I do want to just touch on the Proverbs verse. I think it's interesting that it starts off like, train up a child in the way they should go, and then when they're old, well, what happens in between? There's this very big gap. Not to say that the gap is very big, but there's, a whole life in the middle of there, and I think that's where, the bulk of me coming to Jesus, if you will, happened, is right in that middle ground. So I gave my heart to Jesus from the earliest I can remember at 6 years old, and I'm sure I gave my heart to him multiple times after that at youth sleepaway camps and conventions and places like that. But Jesus was, he just seemed like a third parent to me. He never was, the God that I know today, or the friend that I know, or my Savior. He was just kind of, an extra parent I had to submit to and respect and impress, if you will. It was only later in life that I realized like what a joy it was to know God in that way. But like I referenced earlier, I met my husband at a school convention, and we fell really hard and really fast for each other very early on. We didn't really tell many people how hard and how fast or how often we were seeing each other, even though we were in two different cities. But the jig soon was up after a few years, and we basically lost everyone's trust. And that was a pretty low moment for me. I was used to, having a big social life and a phone and a job. And I think at that time I was even like school president of the council and volleyball captain and all those things, and they were just in an instant they were gone, and rightfully so. We had violated the trust of so many people around us. So as part of earning that trust, though, I remember I was working with you at the office, just doing extra hours, and that was actually a pivotal moment in my life, because in a low time in my life, you gave me trust, you gave me hope, and responsibility when, I deserved it the least. And I remember one of the things that you said to me was like, just keep going, there's a life after this moment. There's more that God has for you after this time in your life. And it's kind of similar to what it says in Philippians 3, I think it's verse 13 and 14, forgetting what is past and pressing on to what God has for you. And that's really stuck with me. The next few years, Jensen and I, we didn't do everything in order after that moment. We did have our son when I was 18, and a year after that was married. But you were right all along. When you turn to God, when you truly are repentant and you ask him to be the Lord of your life, he'll give you favor, he'll give you love. And just like in the prodigal son story in the Bible, he's already standing there waiting with open arms. And
Well, and I know we talked about this before because I didn't want to out something that personal, but it is a common thing that you and I share. Because I had a child out of wedlock at a young age. The difference was you had a committed partner where I didn't even have that. And so I could, I think, relate to you at least on some level. And I'm glad that I was able to kind of help you through that difficult spot and be kind of a soft place to land and to have somebody believe in you. And I know what it's like to deal with the disappointment of people and the judgment too, if I can say that, right? And so, but God is good, and he forgives us, and he gives us a chance to reset our lives when we turn to him. So,
and I will say that both of us, Jensen and I, we have very godly, supportive, wonderful parents, but there's something special about someone outside your family telling you it'll be okay. Of course your family's going to tell you, it'll all be fine, we love you. But when someone else, especially someone who has been through the same thing, says that to you, it hits different.
It makes a difference. I wanted to share a little bit of story about my mom and that time in my life, and the important role that parents do play, especially when their children sometimes make choices that have consequences. And so this was Kurt was 4 weeks old and I was out at the farm. I only had a couple more weeks before I was going back to work because back then you only got 6 weeks mat
So
leave.
crazy.
And I'm, just probably dealing with all the hormones and the reality of I'm a single mom. I think it was just really starting to become very, very real. And I was trying to get him to bottle feed because I had to, get ready to go back to work. And so one night I was in the kitchen and then I spilled the bottle and Kurt was screaming and my breasts were hurting. Anybody who's nurse knows what that's like. Oh, yeah. And all of a sudden I just started crying. It was just completely overwhelmed. And I usually cry when I tell the story. But anyway, my mom, she just came out of nowhere and she had sort of left me dealing with Kurt this whole time because it's like, she said to me later, you have to learn. I need to let her do this. She's going to be on her own, right? Yeah. But that night she came back from the back part of the house into the kitchen and she just took Kurt and she said, you just go to bed. And she just took him over, for the rest of the night. And it just shows how, as parents, we have to be sensitive and discern those moments where we just, now's the moment I got to step in, right? Yeah. So anyway, I'm really happy your parents were there and Jensen's parents were supportive and you have a beautiful family now. And that's so good. Oh, okay. All right. So before we get into some fun memories and some humorous ones, I just wanted to address this whole idea of the older women mentoring the younger women. Mm-hmm. And in Titus 2, 3-5, here's what it says. Likewise, teach the older women to be reverent in the way they live, not to be slanderers or addicted to too much wine, but to teach what is good. Then they can urge the younger women to love their husbands and children and to be self-controlled and pure, to be busy at home, to be kind, and to be subject to their husbands so that no one will malign the word of God. And so in this passage, the Apostle Paul instructs Titus to encourage older women to live in a way so that they can be a positive role model for the younger women in their life. And this mentorship is not only centered around spiritual things, but also practical advice and just general godly living, just modeling those things. In relationships, self-control, kindness, really the fruit of the Spirit, right?
Yeah.
Manifest. Yeah. And so there's a couple of key principles, really. Reverent living. Older women are to live in a way that honors God. Mm-hmm. And then teaching what is good. They are to impart wisdom and guide younger women in godly ways. And so more simply said, as an older woman, I need to not only be a good example by what I say and do, but I also need to be willing to commit myself to others and especially younger women. And I need to be willing to invest my time and energy into building relationships with them and hopefully foster that opportunity to impart some of those things. I've had women like that in my life. Former senior pastor Karen Leach is a prime influencer. Of course, you both know her. And for somebody else who maybe hasn't heard me share about that, she's a trusted friend and she was a special guest on episode 15 if you want to go check that out. And so now when it comes to this idea of mentoring and trying to impart something, I've heard that saying, people aren't really interested about how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And
so we've spent a lot of time together in a lot of different ways. And so now we'll maybe get into a few of those fun stories.
I have fun stories.
I know Charity asked special permission to share this one. And yes, I did give her permission to share it. So go ahead, Charity. Take it away.
It's my favorite story of you, but I'll start off with like a graceful story of you where, we'll ease you in. And it was actually at the same convention. We had, was through the school and we had taken vehicles out to Arizona. And so because of the strict dress code, you were a great mentor in many ways because you were our volleyball coach and you were our supervisor. You took an active role in all of our things 5 days a week, you know. And there was this one time where we were entering the food hall, and the lady who was like the discretionary later to make sure that everybody was under dress code, she didn't like that Kathy didn't have like her shoulder was showing or something like that, and
didn't have
you
the
were being
sleeve.
you didn't have a sleeve. You were being very scandalous.
Oh my gosh!
And at first you were like, "What? Like this is acceptable? Like this was a..." And so you had to go all the way back to our dorms, and it took you like 10 minutes. I think you had to like drive back to the dorms or something. And I think you had just recently had hip surgery.
I was waiting for hip surgery.
You were waiting,
so I was using a cane and a lot.
Yeah, because I just found a picture of you with your cane, and so we had gone back. And then by the time you had come back in front of that lady, you had said, "You know what? I'm sorry. I didn't have the right attitude in front of you, and I am an example to these women." And you had actually immediately apologized, and you're like, "I need to have a better attitude. I apologize." And so not only did you go and you fixed it, even when you were in a cane, you needed a hip surgery, so you were in pain. Like it was a physical sacrifice for you to go and listen. You didn't just go and listen, you came back and you had like reverence and humility for the lady. And that's something that stuck out with me for a very, very long, like even to this day. Like I remember it very clearly that you honored her in that position, and you really taught me that it's important to acknowledge when you've made an error, even if it's something as silly as like your skin was showing, you know what I mean? Like you just were like, you submitted to that authority and you apologized and you moved forward with it. And I thought that was very honorable of you. So thank you for that was like a great mentor moment. But now I'm going to embarrass you. And so in this, we had booked hotel rooms because it was like a 3-day trip to get to Arizona. And Heather had been able to join in with 3 other girls, so they were able to be in their own room, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And then so it was me and 2 other friends, so there was an odd number of girls. And so what had to happen is you had to be in our room with us.
Yes,
and so
I did.
The other 2 friends joined forces very quickly that they were going to share their double bed. And so I got to,
You pulled the short straw.
I pulled the short straw. And then so every time we had to share a bed, every time we were in like a hotel room, it's no problem. I took it with,
See, that's how close we are. We have slept together.
In the same vicinity. And so one morning, because I was a terrible waker-upper person, they were waking me up, and I didn't want to be woken. And so I had decided to stretch out. And I stretched out in the wrong spot, and my hand landed on something wet and cold. And it was right where your bottom would have been sleeping the whole night. And I looked over, and the coloring was like this yellowy, browny, and I was just horrified. And so I called over my 2 friends. I said, "Please tell me this isn't what it looks like." And they're like, "It absolutely is what it looks like." And we called you from the bathroom, I think is where you were. And I was like, "Please explain this to me right now. Like, please, let's move past in our relationship and tell me what I need to know because I touched this." And you were horrified. I don't know if you remembered how horrified you were.
Oh, I'm sure yes.
Yeah. And you're like, "No, it's not what you think. No. It's not what you think." And you were trying frantically to figure out what had happened.
I'm not incontinent.
And so we had discovered that you had placed your coffee mug inside in your bag and you didn't seal it. And so it had leaked out of your bag, and you had placed your bag onto the bed. And so that's what had happened. But of course, when we got back and they're like, "Let's hear your stories," automatically I'm like, "Mrs. Sikora peed the bed."
Yes.
And that's how.
Very grateful. That was the highlight of the Arizona trip.
It was a highlight for me that you had done that. And so, and it's interesting that it's Java and Jesus when it was Java that put you in that position.
Full
circle. Well, see, now you're testifying to my love of coffee.
You love coffee.
That's very good. Very good. Let's let the viewers remember that part. Mrs. Sikora likes coffee. Okay. All right, Heather, maybe you got some special convention and volleyball memories.
Unlike that.
Right. Not everybody can have that story.
I do think my earliest memory of you, with me as a child, was in church. I remember our family sat pretty close to the front, and you and Rod were always at the front. And you were one of the only couples that were dancing together for the Lord. And I don't know why that stuck out to me, but you guys seemed like you were having the best time together in worship to the Lord. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. I'm like, they're having fun. Like, look at their moves. So, yeah, that's definitely a really early memory of mine.
And let me just interrupt you there talking about dancing, because just the other day we were visiting Rod's mom at the seniors home. And we brought her down. They had some elderly gentleman, and he was playing the organ, and everybody was lined up in their wheelchairs, and he was playing some of the old tunes. And then it just occurred to me, you know what? There was room in front there to dance. And I said to Rod, why don't we just dance? They'll probably really enjoy watching us, right? And so we did. We danced, and they were really, it just perked them right up, because they were listening to the music, but then to see a couple dancing, I think they really enjoyed that. And that connection, right? Oh, yeah, and Rod was so cute, because he was acting like he was a little nervous, and I'm kind of going, they're just going to forget 5 minutes later that we were here or something. I don't have to worry. This isn't Dancing with the Stars or anything, right? But anyway, so there's something about that joy of the Lord, I guess, if you will, and dancing.
And as a child, you really connect with that, because that's all you know is the joy. You're happy. As Charity mentioned, you were our volleyball coach, and I just remember your shrieks of joy every time you got a point, and you're kind of stomping on the sidelines if we didn't, but you were just, such a great cheerleader. You encouraged us so much, and even when we didn't believe in ourselves, you absolutely did for us. And we were kind of a ragtag group at first, but you really brought us up to something recognizable as a team. So
we won something sometimes.
So we did.
It was great. And even to this day, you're a woman who I look up to, who is very organized, goal oriented. You always have, a pan that you're frying, and you are confident it's going to get done. And I actually really love that about you.
Oh, thank you. Absolutely. It drives some people crazy, but thank you that it's positive in your life. The volleyball, this is a great example of just making the best with what's at hand. Oh, yeah. So we were a very small school, and this is how many girls we had. I didn't have enough senior girls. I had to use some junior high girls as well, right? And which aren't, known for their height. Heather was the captain. She was the tallest. She was, kind of my big hitter and hard server. And then, you got to make it work. And we just, we did that. And so we quickly discovered that we weren't going to have a game at the net. So we got to figure out where our strengths are. And the serve was our best option, because it's the only thing we could really fully control, right? Yeah. So I came up with all kinds of torture and games to try to just get you so comfortable with serving in any environment. So I'd have, that was how we actually became champions doing that. Yeah. Things like, okay, now everybody suddenly goes silent when somebody's at the edge, or, okay, let's be really noisy, and they have to serve. And for some of the...
I was always so afraid to be so noisy. I wasn't.
And then... some of the serving, like, okay, for like somebody like you, Heather, I'd make you serve 5 in a row. If it was one of the junior high girls, it's just get one over, right? That's your goal. And then if somebody missed, I'd come up with pressure. Okay, now you got to do 5 laps if this person misses, because if one person misses, we all miss, right? And so I shouldn't have maybe had quite so much pleasure in all my...
Well, you created cross-country champions in the making.
That's right.
Running.
Yeah, that's right.
Did a lot.
But we became champions 3 different seasons, and we were one of the smallest schools out there. And so I was very, very, very proud of all of you. And I think I did the best I could, not having any experience coaching. And you guys were so much fun. And
it was fun.
Lots of really good memories for me out of that. I know I want to just mention my dad, because I mentioned my mom. And my dad, he mentored me really kind of in this coaching thing, something that I took away. I remember as kids, we had an undeveloped basement. And so there were those telescopic poles, and
Okay.
we had some cousins over visiting. And I don't know why my dad decided to do this, but he was down there in the basement with us, and he was putting nickels or dimes up on the top of these posts, and us kids were shimmying up and down and getting our quarter whenever we got to the top. And then I had this one cousin, and he was a little pudgy, and so he was having some trouble. He'd have one leg on the ground and one wrapped around the pole, and then he would switch, and he just wasn't going to make it. But he was trying so hard. And then all the rest of us, kids are kids, and we started making fun of him. And then my dad started realizing, he's getting embarrassed, and he had to salvage the moment. And so what he did was he helped him reach it and get his money down. And then us kids were saying, well, that's not fair. He didn't climb up, and my dad just put us all in our spot. And he says, well, from where I was standing, he tried harder than any of you, So he kind of saved face for this cousin. And that really stuck with me, You don't shame people. You try to save face, right? You try to pull, you try to draw from people and get them to try to stretch and reach and all of that. But then there comes a moment where you just have to recognize that was their best effort, and now I got to help them save face. And I hope that's the kind of coach I was too, Effort counts. It's not always just who the most talented individual is, right?
Yeah.
Well, there was a lot of varying degrees of
Talent.
skill on that team, and everybody won. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't just like the top talent or the low, you know what I mean? So I think that you did do that.
Yeah. So I just say thank you to my dad for that. And we still have a few more moments here, but I want to just start wrapping things up a little bit. Brag a little bit about you both, because now you're adults. And I just want to say in front of everybody just how generous you've been to me over the years, and just kind, open, when we run into each other in the foyer, just giving me a hug or a smile, and it means so much to me. I don't have daughters, as people know, and I didn't have sisters. And so it filled a bit of a gap, having a relationship with you girls. I really valued that. God showed me early on that I could bemoan the fact that I only had boys, or I could just try to, make peace with that and try to create other relationships. And I know with my nieces, that was something that I did. I just took them out to the family cabin every year and did time with them. And it was very, very different, surreal experience for me, even starting in the car ride. They would be singing and just laughing and everything. And it was like, wow, this is so different than boys. You get a bunch of boys in the back of the car, and they're WrestleMania. And then when they're all tired out, it's nap time, It's
They
just,
nap?
after they've wrestled around, and then it's like,
There's
okay.
sleep after?
Yeah.
Mine just keep going and going like the Energizer bunnies.
It has to be a long enough ride, I guess, right?
I think so.
But it was just so different. It was like, wow, this is like day and night. But what it showed me is that you just need to make the best of it. And now more recently, I've got daughter-in-laws, and Marika was my first, and I really cherish the relationship that I have with her. And of course, the small group and some of the ladies that are my girlfriends. So God has a way of, creating those dynamics and those special relationships. And so what I'd like you to just share now is a little bit about your adult life. Now, what type of ministry and different things are you both involved with? Just give you a moment. I want to brag on you a little bit. Things you're involved with.
Well, I think early on, I've always been interested in childcare. I think that was one of the first times I helped out a family. This was a mom with 6 children. The youngest were twin babies. And I just have always enjoyed and loved children, and that's carried on over the decades to what I'm doing today. But, I've just noticed that God has a way of using whatever you give him and multiply it. And I used to think I didn't really have a lot, like 2 fish, 5 loaves, seemed like a lot to me. But I know that God has really developed an ability to talk to anyone, anywhere lately. I can talk to people at the grocery store, or playing rec volleyball, or just out at the playground, and just be able to naturally bring up Jesus in a meaningful way. And also just the gifting of hosting. I didn't really know what really that was, but over the last few years, even when we didn't have a suitable house to host, we just started inviting people over for fun times around the fire, or having my kids' friends over, and a lot of them all at once, just for fun. And it turned out to be the best thing. I've had the most meaningful moments with friends and family, and most recently starting a ladies' Bible study with some of my dear friends. And there's just something about eating with people you love, spending face-to-face time, that is just so irreplaceable. So
yeah. So following in a lot of things, because that was me in those early days, just hosting, having people over, starting a small group, hanging out with the kids. So that's really good to see you just finding ways to use your gifts and your talents to serve the kingdom, right? And Charity, how about yourself?
Well, I've always wanted to be a quiet, meek person. And I really admire people that can be those quiet, meek people.
Yes, me too.
But God didn't make me that way. He made me very loud and very probably obnoxious to some people. But I guess you just use it, right? Like and so for serving when I was younger, it was in the children's ministry with dramas and acting and being flamboyant in that way. And then as an adult, I just stayed there. I just stayed in that state of being. And so the children's ministry at Eastside is like a huge passion for me. So I've been a part of it for well over 20 years now, in all aspects of it. The junior room, the nursery, the main area. For about a year and a half or so, I was the kids director for a time period. So I ran the kids ministry, and that was very eye-opening to see like all of the different aspects of the things that, it's one thing being a volunteer, it's another thing being in charge of it. And, and so I have a huge passion for helping kids learn how to read the Bible, and helping kids enter into worship, and helping kids to learn how to pray, and knowing that it doesn't take much to have a relationship and a friendship with Jesus. We don't have to make it like huge in this huge production. That's not what it is. It's just have little faith, and even a small faith as small as a mustard seed can move mountains. And so some of the prayer requests and prayers that these kids make like fill up my heart, like I remember one time this little boy, I like had a paper cut or something, he just grabs my hand and he goes, "Oh, Teacher Charity, let's pray over you." And it was just like the sweetest, most tender moment, but he's so sweet because it just shows us how we need to be like children when we enter the kingdom of God. It doesn't take a huge thing to do that. And so I hope that in that mentorship that I received, I was able to give out to these kids too, and I'm able to continue doing that, because it's if our kids can get that foundation, then they can go in that way, in that pathway. So that's where my passion is, to be with kids as well. Right?
And so I relate to that. So it's kind of interesting. You're both very different, but there's some similarities, right? And so, yes, I'm also not known for being mellow and quiet and shy. So I get that. But what was really nice for me to be a part of, so they still need volunteers, right? So I have a grandson now that's in children's. And so I've been in there on the odd occasion. And so now I'm sitting in the audience and kind of helping with crowd control, as you say, and you're up at the front where I used to be, right? In that scenario. And it was like, oh, wow, it's just, again, so proud of you both, and the women that you've become, and the families that you're raising. And it's really a blessing. It's a blessing for us older ones to see that next generation coming up. And you, as my audience, can't see my tech guy Paul, but he's one of those Eastside kids that hung around with my boys, and now he is helping me on this podcast. So Paul, thank you for that. And anyway, I think all these relationships are so important. And I hope that you don't mind me saying that I consider you as daughters in the Lord. And so proud of you both and privileged to have been some part of your life. And you are amazing examples for the next generation and those coming up behind you. So that's awesome.
Thank you.
So do you guys have anything else you want to share?
I was just going to mention that the most notable mentors I've had in all my years, I can think of my mom, my older sister Rebecca, my mother-in-law Roxanne, and Jensen's grandma, who I absolutely loved and adored and adopted as my own. Really, the one thing these godly women had in common was that they put their families first over, a ministry as we would think of it. Their ministry was their family. Their ministry was submitting and serving their family in the best way they knew how. And out of that overflow of the love of their families, they were able to share the meals and share the advice and take other young moms under their wings. So I just wanted to point out that when a godly woman is acting out of proper order that God designed, where it's God, her husband, her children first, she is the most impactful to those around her, because I noticed when I was younger. And when that order is not followed, I think people can kind of smell it, like, something's off. Like, why is she not spending time with the people God gave her to her as her family? Why is she not doing what is most natural to her as a mother? And I know this doesn't apply to everyone listening, but it was just something that just stuck out to me right away, is that the joy that they found in serving their families was just so fulfilling for them.
That's awesome.
And when divine order is out of sync, right? Then it shows kind of a neediness. Maybe somebody's trying to fill a void and they're trying to get attention, or something is not quite right. And then it loses the impact that it could have.
Well, just like Titus literally said at the end, it maligns the word of God. They're trying to find value or seek attention from, or worth it. Exactly. From somewhere that it's not proper for them to seek it from, where it should be from God or God's word. So it's right there. Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up, because it's so good. Charity, what about you? Any final kind of comments before we?
Like I mentioned Lisa Honorat as like a huge mentor to me, but I had so many mentors. Lisa needed to move on and, start Haiti Arise with Mark, right? So it's not like, I'm very grateful for the time that I did have with her. And I was able to go to Haiti on a missions trip and actually see their plan, like everything that they've been doing. But like, I didn't just have one mentor. I had many mentors. You were a mentor. And, I had other mentors in youth group. And Pastor Jan is a huge mentor to me, especially when I was on staff here. And then, so because of these different women that have imparted into me, it's made me who I am. Because I didn't have that, solid relationship with my mom. And because my grandma died when I was really young and I was estranged from so many different relatives, I didn't have that family life. And so church and the mentors in the church had to be in that placement for me. And I'm so thankful that God did place me in that. And I know that that's where a lot of my foundation came from, as why I never left the faith and I never had those wavering moments, because there was so many amazing people that were willing to mentor me and willing to impart into me. And I just thrived off of that, and I'm so grateful for that. So if, to the people that are listening, like whether you have children or you're not married or you are married, like there are people that you can help. There are people that you can serve, and you do have a role of importance. And it will align. Maybe it's a family member, maybe it's somebody at church, maybe it's a single mother. I don't know what every situation is, but you do have a place to mentor somebody.
That's right.
And you can start in your own home with a sibling, with a child, with, somebody, but you have the ability to encourage, you have the ability to help, make a meal for, or, clean a toilet for. It doesn't matter what that is, but all of the people that imparted into me made me who I am. So it's, I don't look at my life going, oh, wow, look at how much I've done work. No, it's because there was literally 50 people that gave me different parts of them, and they were willing to give me those parts of them, just like you did, for years on end. So thank you for that, because I needed that for my life.
Well, it's that saying, right? It takes a village. It takes a village, and also, trying not to get so formal about, well, I'm mentoring so-and-so or whatever. It's just,
It was relationship.
It's relationship and just the different seasons and the ebb and the flow and trying not to get possessive about, I'm mentoring this person, or getting weird about it. It's just taking those opportunities organically, those chances that you just have right there in that moment, and then realizing that people move on and different things happen. So,
and to forgive, like, it's okay. That's normal for people to go and come and go, and don't get hurt when you had somebody really special to you and then God puts them in a different place, or you please, like, don't get offended by that, because sometimes that person was just there for a small season, and then there's going to be that they're there in your life for a longer season, and just be so thankful that you had that person in your life in that moment.
And it brings me to scripture that I kind of want to end with, I guess, and it's Acts 20:35. In everything I did, I showed you that by this kind of hard work, we must help the weak, remembering the words the Lord Jesus himself said. It is more blessed to give than to receive. And if you approach mentoring with that attitude of not having an expectation that there's something in it for you necessarily, although there always is, when you're doing God's business or you're in his will, you'll always get something out of it. But really the goal is that's not the goal, to do it for that reason, right? It's more blessed to give than to receive. It really holds true. And so I hope that today we've inspired some of our listeners with our little trip down memory lane. And I think we're going to try to put some pictures at the end in a little collage, just if somebody wants to watch this on YouTube, they'll be able to see that. And it's my prayer that anybody who listen to this will look around and consider who God might want you to share your faith with in a meaningful relationship. Maybe God will prompt you to take some extra time and reach out, commit to serving that next generation, right? In a way, maybe pick up a contact from the past that maybe God's putting somebody on your heart, right? And here's what I can say. It's well worth it when you do, right?
Yeah.
And finally, thanks you guys for being listeners of my podcast and being willing to come on this episode. And I don't want to miss an opportunity to thank those of you that are watching and those of you who have liked and subscribed. Thank you for that. Whatever platform you're on, I'm sure grateful that you're listening. And I hope that you'll consider sharing this with somebody that you know and love, and help me get the good news about the love and hope we have with Jesus out to more people. And so until next time, I just want to say goodbye and thank you guys again.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
So much fun.
Yeah. Okay. Bye for now.